Nelson Mandela was born in a small village in South Africa. The village was quiet, with green hills and trees that danced in the wind. Little Nelson ran barefoot on the soft soil, playing with his friends. They laughed and dreamed, not knowing how hard the world outside their village was. But Nelson saw something that made him feel sad. He saw people being treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. It hurt his heart. Nelson wanted to change this. Even as a boy, he was brave. He listened to stories from elders about warriors who fought for their people. Those stories stayed in his mind. He wanted to be like them, strong and kind, a helper for everyone. He didn't know how, but he felt a fire in his heart. He promised himself that one day he would make things better for his people. During this summer, when everyone was out working, Nelson grew older. He went to school far from his village. It was hard to leave his family, but he knew learning was important. He loved books and words. He believed that knowledge was a powerful tool. But life was not easy. In South Africa, there was a law called apartheid. This law kept black people and white people apart. Black people could not live in certain places, go to certain schools, or even walk freely in some areas. Nelson felt this was wrong. He wanted to fight this injustice. As a young man, Nelson moved to the city. There he saw even more unfairness. He saw black people working hard, but they were paid very little. He saw children without schools and families without homes. Nelson's heart ached for them. He decided to become a lawyer. He thought, if I understand the law, I can help my people. He worked very hard, reading books late into the night. His eyes would get tired, but he didn't stop. He believed that every page he read was a step closer to freedom. One day, Nelson met people who felt the same way he did. They also wanted to end apartheid. Together, they joined a group called the African National Congress, ANC. They talked about freedom and justice. They planned peaceful protests. But the government did not like this. They wanted to keep things the same. They called Nelson and his friends troublemakers. Nelson knew the path he chose was dangerous, but he also knew it was right. He whispered to himself, "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to act despite it." Years passed, and the protests grew louder. Nelson became a leader. People listened to his words because they came from his heart. He said, "We are all brothers and sisters. We must live as equals." His words gave hope to many, but they made others angry. The government arrested him many times. Each time he stood tall and said, "I will not give up." But one day, something big happened. Nelson was arrested and sent to prison for a long, long time. The prison was cold and lonely. Nelson's cell was small, with only a thin mat to sleep on. He worked hard, breaking rocks under the hot sun. His hands became rough and sore, but he did not let the prison break his spirit. He said to himself, "They can lock my body, but they cannot lock my mind." At night, when the world was quiet, he would dream of a free South Africa. These dreams gave him strength. One day in prison, Nelson saw something special. A little plant grew in the prison yard. It pushed through the hard ground, reaching for the sun. Nelson smiled and thought, if this tiny plant can grow here, so can hope. He took care of the plant, watering it when he could. It became a symbol of his belief that even in darkness, light can be found. Years turned into decades. Nelson's hair turned gray, but his hope stayed strong. Outside the prison, people did not forget him. They marched in the streets, shouting, "Free Nelson Mandela!" The whole world began to watch. Leaders from other countries also asked for his freedom. The government felt the pressure. They knew they could not silence him forever. Finally, after 27 years, Nelson Mandela was free. The day he walked out of prison, the sun shone bright. Crowds of people cheered and sang. Nelson smiled, but tears filled his eyes. He looked at the faces of the people and said, "Today is the beginning of a new journey." But he knew the work was not over. South Africa was still divided. He wanted to heal his country, to bring people together. Nelson did something surprising. Instead of being angry at those who put him in prison, he chose to forgive them. He said, "Hate only makes the burden heavier. Love makes it lighter." This was his secret tip. Forgiveness is stronger than revenge. His words touched hearts. People began to see that unity was possible. In 1994, something amazing happened. Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. The country was filled with hope. Nelson worked hard to make schools, hospitals, and homes for everyone. He wanted every child to have the chance to dream, just like he did as a boy running in the village. He showed that through struggle and hard work, change is possible. Nelson often thought deeply about life. He once said, "It always seems impossible until it is done." He believed that even the hardest problems could be solved with patience and courage. His life was proof of this. He faced pain, loss, and fear, but he never gave up. He turned his struggles into strength. He turned his dreams into reality. As Nelson grew older, he shared his wisdom with the world. He reminded people that kindness is a powerful weapon. He said, "We are not born hating. We learn to hate. If we can learn to hate, we can also learn to love." These words became a guide for millions. We needed to understand how the soul of a child, how they live and care for us, and how they need to be fed. Nelson loved children and believed they were the future. He often visited schools and spent time with the youth. He would kneel to their level, looking into their eyes and telling them, "You are the leaders of tomorrow. Dream big and never stop learning." His laughter echoed with theirs, filling rooms with warmth and joy. He believed that teaching the young was the best way to change the world for the better. He also enjoyed simple things. Nelson loved the land of his birth, its hills, rivers, and open skies. He would often say, "Nature reminds us that even the smallest things can grow strong." His time in prison had taught him to value the simple beauty of the world around him. He planted trees and encouraged others to take care of the earth, saying, "If we respect the land, it will give back to us." Nelson's journey was not just about South Africa. He became a symbol of hope for the whole world. Leaders and people from faraway places came to him for advice. He spoke about peace and understanding, reminding everyone that our differences make us unique, but our humanity makes us the same. His words were like seeds growing in the hearts of those who listened. Nelson also cared deeply for those who had been hurt by the long years of apartheid. He visited communities, listening to their stories of struggle and pain. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to help the nation heal. It was not easy to hear the tales of suffering, but Nelson believed that facing the truth was the first step to building a better future. He often said, "True forgiveness is not forgetting. It is understanding and choosing to move forward." Children often ran to Nelson with smiles and open arms. He would pick them up and spin them around, laughing as if he were one of them. He believed every child deserved a childhood filled with joy and opportunities. When he spoke to them, he encouraged them to chase their dreams fearlessly. Do not let anyone tell you that you cannot. You are the future, and the future is bright, he would say. He had a special way of making everyone feel valued. When meeting people, whether they were leaders or ordinary citizens, he would shake their hands, look into their eyes, and make them feel seen. His humility was a lesson in itself. He taught the world that true greatness comes from serving others. We rise by lifting others, he often said. As Nelson grew older, he spent more time with his family. One day after my father died, he was sitting at his table with the 3 members of his family. He loved sitting under the shade of a tree, telling stories to his grandchildren. They would listen with wide eyes as he spoke about his life, his struggles, and the lessons he had learned. He taught them the importance of courage, kindness, and always standing up for what is right. Nelson's health began to weaken, but his spirit remained strong. Even in his final years, he continued to inspire people. He reminded everyone that the fight for justice and equality was not over. The road is long, but each step we take brings us closer to the dream, he said. When Nelson passed away, the world cried. People from every corner of the earth remembered his life and his message. They lit candles, sang songs, and said prayers. But they also smiled, knowing he had left the world a better place. Nelson Mandela's story reminds us that one person can make a difference. With courage, hope, and love, even the tallest mountains can be climbed. The wind blew softly through the green hills of his village, as if whispering his name. His spirit lived on, in the hearts of all who believed in justice, freedom, and unity. And so, the story of Nelson Mandela, the boy from the village who changed the world, will be told forever.